Welcome to the story of Sam and Cy. Woohoo, yeah! So, the story starts in 1963, before the Beatles came, before President Kennedy was, shot. Oh no, hang on. That's the start of Dirty Dancing. Yeah, I always get those two confused. This story actually starts not long after midnight on January 1st, 1981. Sam went straight from the delivery room into the glare of the world's media, making an appearance in all the highbrow press. The new decade was in full swing, and Margaret Thatcher wasn't the only one having fun. In fact, it's entirely possible that as Sam was being born into the world, that Simon was being conceived, because it wasn't long before he made his grand entrance. What can I say? Like Jon Snow, his birth rocked the north, and he arrived on 19th of September 1981. So there we are. It's 1981, a young Sam and her young toy boy Cy are hundreds of miles apart. The fraught drama of it all. I mean, it's basically like a better Romeo and Juliet. Star-crossed lovers, feuding families. I mean, our families didn't know each other then, but that's irrelevant. And then, the Bernals decided that they were going to relocate to Colombia. Baby Sam? Well, she kept it real. She wanted to discover the local delicacies that Barnet had to offer. Yeah, she's always been low maintenance like that. To be honest though, it's probably more because she was pretty ginge back then, and the family feared persecution if they travelled too far from the house. Life was pretty sweet those first 4 years though. While Cy was soaking up the sun South American style, Sam was being pushed down giant hills by Joe. It was in 1985 though that things got juicy and both their lives would change forever. Because in 1985, I was born. I was instantly the star attraction of the family and the country. In fact, my arrival was heralded around the world. I haven't actually asked Cy's parents, but I'm pretty sure this event also prompted their decision to return to the UK. I mean, my mum even told me that a big bunch of pop stars put together a concert to celebrate my arrival. So, Bernals are back in the UK and they're living in... well, you kind of get the idea where they're living. They lapped up all the sights and sounds that the Southwest had to offer, thinking they'd be heading south again soon. But luckily, they decided to stay in the UK. It was around this time that the toddlers were due to start school, so off Sam trundled to the local primary, where Mum and Joe had already trailblazed, or should I say, bulldozed before her. Mum felt she'd lost her right arm, having grown accustomed to little Sam being bossy and organised. It's bizarre, I don't know what happened to those traits. Simon was in the year below Sam, and as keen as he was to start school, he actually had to start a bit later, because the pesky blighter somehow managed to contract measles. Joyfully, it wasn't too bad, and he was able to jump on that education train faster than he now jumps on a pint. Throughout early school life, they both did all the things you'd expect. It was around this time that Cy started experimenting with music, learning how to play the violin and recorder. I mean, he could have been like the next Beethoven, but he's not. It's remarkable, even when they didn't know each other, their interests were hugely aligned. Sam also played instruments, but more impressively, regularly joined me for Elton John sing-alongs in the backseat of my mum's car. It was pretty clear from an early age that Sam was a creative sort, with, a way with words. Like I'm sure it was clear to those who knew Cy that he also had the gift of the gab, something I understand he may have picked up from his dad. It served them both well throughout secondary school. Joe and I basically had a chat and decided it was best that Sam was removed from the house. Joe thought she was becoming too smart. I thought that, I was just bored of having two very bossy sisters, so Sam went off to the beautiful Queenswood school where she was a day boarder. It turned out pretty well though, really. Luckily, Sam was still around enough to shield me from Joe's razor-sharp fingernails. This was also where Sam took up various posh sports. She was rather fond of a bit of tennis and hockey, which is interesting because Cy was also a big sports enthusiast, playing rugby and hockey, even being selected for Oxfordshire's under-16 squad. It was also around this time that he became friends with his future best man, Rich, who here looks a little bit evil and sinister. They got up to all sorts of shenanigans between them, but I think I'll leave Rich to cover that in his speech. Sam's musical career was long behind her. Instead, she focused on being funny and just a bit too clever for my liking. After her ridiculous GCSE results, she decided that she was done with the all-girls school world and decided to move to the all-boys school world. That's right, she went to a boys' school where she was one of 10 girls to 120 boys. Bit mental. I joined the school when Sam was in the upper 6th, and I have to say, looking back, I'm pretty relieved that she was there. It was a tough year, but Sam and her friends made me feel very cool and chased off all the bullies. After her A-levels, Sam took herself off travelling in her gap year to discover all the sights, sounds and alcohol the world had to offer. Si had already entered the world of work, turning down uni offers he'd received. He decided his future was in the majestic world of accountancy, with all those numbers and digits and all those brilliant things. Sam returned to the UK a new person and headed off to Leeds Uni, where she was a slave to her studies. Meanwhile, Si was dazzling the world of accountancy with his numerical prowess. That is, until 5 PM Friday. In turn, graduation brought with it some big decisions. Somewhat surprisingly, Sam also opted to enter the wonderful world of finance. Thank God for me, otherwise my parents wouldn't have any interesting children with worrying futures. Their 20s saw Sam and Si living the big city life, taking it all in their stride, living it up, going out and socialising, doing lots more travel, but it also brought with it some pretty big lows. As it turns out, Ronan Keating? Yeah, he was right. But luckily, good things do come to those who wait. And finally, 2 years ago, in the middle of 2011, Sam and Si's worlds finally collided. Happiness just fell on them, and it was all good and floaty, like love and puppies and kittens and all fluffy, soft things. And when they looked at each other, they saw stars. Their life together has been a brilliant amalgamation of champagne and travel, and as we all know, that can only lead to one thing. Other people's weddings! That's right, Sam and Si have been to literally so many weddings, it's absolutely mental. After like the 50th, Si suddenly had a brilliant idea. Aha! I will propose! And so he did. And Sam said yes, and it was brilliant, and they were so happy, and everyone was so happy. And then, ta-da! Here we are today, in Italy, celebrating Sam and Si's happy, happy day. And we all know that whatever storms might come their way, they'll make it through to see the sun. Because after all, they've both had great role models as parents. Parents whose love means that they're always put first. And that means that they know what love is. Earlier this year, when I was marathoning like a maniac around Europe, Sam and Si were with me every step of the way, chasing me down the Champs-Élysées, tweeting and texting me as I struggled along in Vienna, shouting out my name in London. I'm not sure I would have got through it without the love and support that they showed me. That's how I know the amount of love that they have to give. When they have their own family, they'll have the luckiest children in the world, because they too will know what love is. So raise your glasses for love, family, and for Sam and Si.